promised, Tim Ingle is in the studio with us this morning. He is one of two candidates for mayor of Wichita Falls. Last week, we spoke with his opponent. This week, Tim is live in the studio with us. Good morning, Mr. Ingle, or may I call you Tim?
Oh, please call me Tim.
All right.
Thank you.
Tim, welcome to the program. Glad to have you.
Thank you. So glad to be here.
All right, Tim, you're a retired U.S. Air Force Lieutenant Colonel, 22 years of service to our country. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
And you've served on the city council for a time now.
Yeah, 6 years.
Okay. And what made you decide to make a run at mayor?
Well, Mike, that's probably the question of the ages here. It's really hard to kind of describe how deep my love for the city goes and what happens, but I want to kind of describe it in the 6 years that I've been on council. It's one thing to say I love something. It's another thing, to talk it. It's another thing to walk it.
Right.
And so my 6 years on this council has probably been one of the toughest times in a city's history. We just come out of a big recession.
Yeah.
We just rolled into just about thinking we recovered from that, and then we had the drought hit, and that just kind of paralyzed us for a little while. And then we got into the flood, and now we're finally getting to the point where we can do it. But I was just so amazed as I walked through those years, those difficult years, and watching the citizens of Wichita Falls and seeing how our staff and our council all work together. We made some incredible decisions to get us through where we were. And there were people that left the city, and there were people that stuck it out.
Yeah.
And I was never more impressed to be a citizen of Wichita Falls. It's almost like somebody that goes through a real deep, troubling medical situation in your family. It either breaks you apart or it makes you closer.
Yeah.
Well, that's what happened. And so the thing that's probably the icing on the cake for me in terms of my love for the city was right last year when we had the flood in part of May. We had the rains, thank you God. The lake started to fill up, and then we're like, okay, that's good. The lakes are full. No, here it comes. And so more and more was coming. And at the time, Glenn was out of town on a vacation or stepped out. And so I was the acting mayor since the council has elected me 2 years in a row unanimously to be the stand-in mayor pro tem. I stepped in for 3 days and watched it. And I got to watch an incredible team. Not only had our citizens worked really hard to save us through the drought and reduce the water that we'd used to give us the extension, but then when the floods came, I watched our first responders, our fire, our police, our emergency management, the county, the way the state walked in. And to sit there, watch what was going on, see those teams all work together, and then watch us come through this with full lakes overflowing. The love that I felt for the city and the depth just made me even more when it came time to run for mayor to say, I'm ready to be your mayor. I'm ready to lead this town into the vision that I think where we need to go.
In the last couple of weeks, a bit of a controversy had erupted. Mm-hmm. Your opponent, Stephen Santayana, is partners in a business venture with a man who has had multiple run-ins with the law with DUIs. And they also, this same individual, Chad Wilson, was awarded a sizable contract, about $95,000, I believe it was, to do some demolition work for the city. Mm-hmm. And you had questioned the ethical nature of Stephen's vote in that, since he and Mr. Wilson are business partners. Now, the business that won the award is not the same company on paper that Stephen Santayana and Chad Wilson are partners in. It's a different company, but nonetheless, you had questioned the legality even of his vote. You have since clarified some of those statements that you made in a television interview. Walk us through what it is you saw as the problem from your viewpoint with the vote, and what you have, whatever revelations you've come to since then with that. With that.
Yeah, clarifying is exactly the word. I was very troubled by what had happened and what I read in the paper. And just a little background on me, and where my barometer stands on ethics. This little story, when I was about 4.5, I was walking right next to my father, not more than we're on a nice morning, beautiful morning. We're going to go get a paper out of the old machines where you put a dime in and lift it up and pull the paper out. Mm-hmm. Well, there's a guy right in front of us, and he's getting a paper. He puts a dime in, lifts the paper up, lifts the door up, pulls the paper out, and he turns around to my father smiling and says, "Here you go, sir." And he left the door open. Well, it's right at my eye level. So I'm reaching my hand in to grab the paper for my dad because the gentleman did us a favor. And my dad immediately just started closing the door and he shut it down. And I was like, Dad, and here I am 4.5. I'm still trying to figure out right and wrong. Mm-hmm. And I said, Dad, the guy left the door open for us. Let's get it. And I never forget the look on his face when he looked down at me and I looked up at him and he goes, you know that's wrong. Somebody worked for that paper. Somebody distributed that paper. Mm-hmm. He put it in there, put the quarter in, pulled the paper out, and I was from then on I was looking for right and wrong. And then I roll in a couple years later. I'm at the Air Force Academy. And we're learning about I will not lie, steal, or cheat, nor tolerate among us anyone who will. And the idea of tolerating is the same punishment for lying. And you had to keep yourself at a very high ethical standard. And then when you roll into the Air Force, you're under the Uniform Code of Military Justice. How many generals have we seen get caught having adultery, and their careers are ruined for just an adultery? So the idea that I have been taught ethics, which is way above the letter of the law and legal, is deep in my core. And so when I saw all these allegations and things come forward, let's fast forward to just a year or so ago. I had the opportunity to a friend that I knew and I flew in the military with. He was getting some grant money to start up a business. And I told the mayor and the city councilors, I said, I cannot vote for this grant because I know this man and I'm a personal friend of him. I'm not in business with him. But it just wouldn't be right for another retired military person to vote money to another retired person that you flew with. And I told them all, and I recused myself, and I didn't need a legal definition to do that. I just did it because it was the right thing to do. And so, in the whole spirit of transparency and disclosure, yes, did he legally do everything correct and that he's allowed to vote? Yes, he did. But I would have liked to have known. I would have liked to have been disclosed. I don't know how the other counselors feel. I'm just talking about me. But that makes a decision for me. How do I best vote for my constituents? Wow, how deep does it go? Where is it hit? How long have you been in this? Just 2 months? Right. There's so many questions that could have been asked, and I probably would have really questioned my vote or if I would have voted for it because of the perception that it gives you.
So to clarify for everyone listening, what you're saying is he did not individually inform the counselors, his fellow counselors, of the nature of the business relationship between he and Chad Wilson before the vote.
Yes.
Now, his claim is that legally he could not do that. I believe I'm correct in saying that, is that he couldn't do that.
You can do whatever you want.
He also says that, according to the city attorney, he could not legally recuse himself from voting for or in that motion to award that contract, that he had to vote. He was legally compelled to vote. It sounds like you're disputing that.
Well, I would say that I was legally bound to vote because I didn't have a business interest in this gentleman. And I disclosed to the council what I did. Right. I said, hey, I could come and vote for this. Right. But I didn't really care about that legal portion of it. I was going to a higher standard, and that is you don't vote taxpayer dollars to a personal friend and or business associate. And that was just my bottom line. That was the clarifying that I wanted to put out there. The taxpayers, I mean, I said this to other people. I said, outside the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, Declaration of Independence, the next thing that's sacred is taxpayer dollars. And they want politicians. They want people who will come in and serve and hold the highest standard you can have.
Right. Well, let's move on and talk a little bit about what you envision for the city. Tim Ingle, as mayor, what direction would you want to see the city move? What ideas or plans would you have for the city of Wichita Falls?
Well, again, the second best question out here. It is so important that we grow. I mean, it's the number one question on everybody's mind. Let's grow, let's grow. And it's easy to say, we got to grow, we got to grow. It's another question to say, how are we going to do it? What are some specifics? Two things that you got to realize. First off, we compete against the rest of the world in Texas. It's not just Wichita Falls trying to get a few jobs. It's trying to fight jobs going to Mexico, overseas.
Sure. All
the rest of the cities in Texas that have billions of dollars to put into that. We are in a fight. And so we have to do it better and cheaper than anybody else. And second off, we have to understand our economy and that we can't exactly get every aerospace job here. We're an aerospace community. That's a given. But you can't get large aircraft in here because you can't mix them up with Shepherd. So we have to be very, very specific and very, very patient in what we want.
Sure.
So here's some things that we can do. And these are the things that I wanted to do. First and foremost, we have to remove the barriers. If there's anything at the city level that I can do to remove the barrier, to make it easier, to reduce overburdensome regulation, to make planning and zoning, we're going to do that. We have to continue to beautify the city. We have to, so that people come here and they like what they see. Third, we have to get downtown growing and be vibrant. We have to have that. Right. If we don't, people will come here and look at it and say, this town isn't growing. And lastly, we have to become a city that's an education city. Obviously, we're already a college town. We could be a bigger college town. You know, it's interesting. I went to pilot training out in Lubbock, and I remember driving into Lubbock from Reese Air Force Base and reading the sign, and it said 104,000 people. And I think, well, that's the size of Wichita Falls. But that was 30 years ago. And then Reese went away. Mm-hmm. And what did they do? They became a Texas Tech. They became a great college town. Mm-hmm. And so education is important because the only way we're going to really have the companies come here, the only way we're going to get private capital, investors, and developers to come here with their money is if we have an educated workforce. And that's working with the school district. That's working with our schools, the buildings. We have to invest in our school system in order to really build the workforce that we need.
I want to talk a little bit first about downtown.
Yes.
We have seen a little bit of a resurgence in the last few years in downtown. We've got apartments, we've got shops, businesses, things are starting to pop down there really well. But, you know, downtown, for the longest time, I know when I was growing up here, downtown was really dead. There was nothing there. Mm-hmm. But people used to talk about, well, how it was in the 40s and the 50s and the 60s and all the retail. But the direction we're headed seems to be a little bit different. Not so much on the retail side, but on the entertainment side, antique shops, maybe more clubs or bars or whatever, but museums, things like that. Do you see that trend continuing for downtown, or do you see other things happening for downtown? Where do you think we're headed?
Well, that is exactly the direction that I wanted to go. I have pushed for an overall downtown revitalization plan for a while. We're working around the bus station on a transit-oriented development right now to work around IMPEC and to get that moving and that starting to generate more income. Professional Wrestling Hall of Fame has really started to change the downtown in terms of visitors and attracting. Mm-hmm. So now we're looking at it as a destination. And so what do people want to come here and have fun and do? Well, I can't decide what business is going to come in here, but when those 4 steps that I talked about, when we talked about creating, those will create the environment for growth. And then those also have come with incentives for the businesses that we want in there. And then the last thing is we're going to have to do is we're going to have to put an overall plan together to tie in the transit-oriented impact area, about a half mile around that, with the central business district.
Sure.
And so that's going to have to, we're going to look at corridors, travel, parking, parks, where we want people to go, museum district. There's a lot of things that have got to flow into this, and there's going to be a lot of input from the citizens, and I'm very excited about this whole plan coming together. Mm-hmm. And it's exactly what's good for Wichita Falls, and that is what I like. Not what worked at other cities, but take the same philosophy and put it for what works for Wichita Falls.
Obviously, Shepherd Air Force Base is very near and dear to your heart, being retired military. We've got one major threat that I can think of to Shepherd, and that is this proposed wind farm in Clay County, which Shepherd argues will disrupt their radar operations to the point that they would not be able to fly training missions anymore, which would put a serious dent in Shepherd's mission here. Yes. What is your vision for Shepherd? I think I already know how you feel about the wind farm, but we'll go into that as well if you'd like.
Yes. Well, Shepherd's my home. I came here as a pilot, and I flew 10 years on the flying side, on the 80th Flying Training Wing. And then, of course, the 82nd side is really the combat capability of the Air Force. I mean, we're the global leader. We're the most deadly, most powerful Air Force in the history of mankind. And if it wasn't for Shepherd, it wouldn't be there. So Shepherd is paramount to us. And it's also about a quarter of our economics. And if it went away, obviously, it would. But Shepherd is going to stay. Now, from the flying side and from these wind farms, not only does it block certain sectors by popping up almost 500 feet, over 500 feet into the air, it's also in one of the instrument approach corridors that I flew many, many years in bad weather, because you just can't have multiple aircraft flying side by side to 3 runways. You have to have somebody coming in from a different direction in order to keep spacing. So from that aspect of understanding where it is, it's right up underneath the approach. So when you're coming in, you would actually have to come in 500 to 600 feet higher than you are now, which would raise our cloud requirements. So on days when there's low weather, which the last couple of years have been over 100 days where that was low, the T-6s could not fly. They would be frozen. It would hurt the timeline. And now you're talking every NATO country that trains fighter pilots trains them here. Almost every country that's in NATO lines. They need us. We need them. They cannot do this mission without Shepherd. We don't want them to leave. You talk about national security and national military strategy and how important NATO is. We're one of the few unique bases outside of Corpus Christi that has this. We cannot let this happen. And there's some really good things on board right now. I know from the federal level, Senator Cornyn is working on an overall bill to keep all wind farms out of 25 miles. I know the state, Representative Franks and Senator Estes are working hard on incentives to make sure that if they're within 25 miles, they can't get the tax breaks that they might need. And the city is also working on air easements, where we're going to go to the surrounding places and say, for perpetuity, no matter what you do, no one can put a wind farm here. So we're looking at lots of layers.
We do have a phone call here for you this morning. You're on the air with Wake Up Call and mayoral candidate Tim Ingle. Go ahead, please.
Well, my question is, wouldn't they, once they put up those wind farms, wouldn't they take that land from farm exemption to a commercial and industrial tax base, since they're going to take on the duty of providing electricity for everybody and getting rid of Shepherd? Wouldn't they need to be considered the tax base from then on?
Well, that's a great economic question. What's your name, sir?
He's already hung up. So.
Oh, he already hung up.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's a challenging thing to talk about what the impact of wind farms are, because outside of Abilene, it saves these small counties. So wind farms have done some good stuff for the state of Texas, and some places really love it. But Air Force bases, especially flying training bases, and especially a NATO base, we don't love it. And I think that there's plenty of money to be made outside of 25 miles of our base.
Well, and it seems really a contradiction, because the wind farms would not exist without the federal tax breaks.
Yes.
The incentives that are given.
Yes.
They couldn't exist. They couldn't be built.
Mm-hmm.
But yet the construction of this federally subsidized wind farm may shut down a major federal government operation, that being Shepherd Air Force Base. How does the government, how do they justify that? How would you justify allowing a wind farm in an area that could shut down one of the government's key military operations?
Well, I think that's why Senator Cornyn put that, is written that law. Yeah. Because it just can't happen. We can't let this happen. Of all the places in the middle and western central United States that you could put a windmill, why do you want to put it right there?
Yeah.
Why do you want to put it right there?
Most horrible location.
Yeah, and I think if from a federal level, it's probably easier because, hey, find some other place to put it. Just stay outside of 25 miles.
Okay, one other question for you. MPEC, we've got a new management company that has taken over the operations of the MPEC.
Mm-hmm.
I know there are some concerns in the community among nonprofits.
Yes.
Many of whom utilize those facilities multiple times throughout the year.
Mm-hmm.
They're concerned about not being able to cater their own events or bring in their own caterers. They're concerned about costs going up. Can you address any of that for them? Because I know I've had several people with nonprofits come to me and go, you know what, this doesn't look good for us. What's your take on it?
Well, it's a thing that's probably hurt MPEC and the ability to generate revenue to help pay for itself. I mean, we subsidize it with over 1.5 million taxpayer dollars.
Right.
So while I'm number one and how important nonprofits are for us, at some point we have to be able to compete with everybody. And that's what Spectra does. They bring in the competition. They bring in their network. They bring in their employees and their work base to work hard and to really create the customer service there that I don't know that has been there in the past. And so we're bringing in an excellent corporation, and we got to give them the opportunity to serve these nonprofits and show them that you're going to get way more bang for your buck with these guys than you were getting with city-run operations. And I think they're going to get it because they have much better advertisement, they have much better publicity than we did, and they know how to make these things grow and make these things and get more people to attend to it. So, but at some point, we have to realize that we built that MPEC 20 years ago. We did not set aside funds to fix it. We have some serious maintenance has to get done on it.
Sure.
We have to look at reality and what's going to the future of what's going to happen with MPEC. And so we have to make it work and be profitable. And Spectra's a great company. They're willing to work with us and anything we can do. And I think they're willing to work with the nonprofits But I think the nonprofits should give them an opportunity to show that they're going to get much better service, and I think they're going to be much happier with the product that they get.
All right, Tim Ingle, retired U.S. Air Force officer, city council member, current mayor pro tem, and also a candidate for mayor of Wichita Falls. Election day, of course, is next Tuesday, but you can early vote right now. But election day next Tuesday, and if people want to reach out to you, if they've got questions as one of your constituents currently as a council member, or if they've got questions about your run for mayor, how do they get in touch with you?
Well, very easily. My stuff's all online on the city webpage, but it's tim.ingle at wichitafallstx.gov. My home number is 691-6564. My cell is 782-2490. And if you want to visit my website, Tim Ingle for Mayor, the number 4, or Tim Ingle for Mayor on my Facebook, same name. You can see the accomplishments, what I've done, and what my vision is.
All right. Tim Ingle, thanks very much for being here this morning.
You bet.